All right, you sick fucks. Let's crack this motherfucker walled open. The human genome. It's like the instruction manual for building a person, except way more fucked up and a hell of a lot more interesting.
It really is a fascinating topic.
You're telling me?
It wasn't that long ago, 2022,
Oh, yeah?
that scientists finally sequenced a complete human genome for the first time.
Are you shitting me? We've been walking around for millennia, totally clueless about what makes us us. You guys sent us a ton of articles about the human genome, so we're going to dive into that twisted-ass science and give you magnificent bastards to download.
The goal today is to kind of help you sift through all the really complex information and figure out what's important.
Exactly. No need to bore everyone with all the technical mumbo-jumbo-jumbo. So first things first, how long is this DNA scroll anyway? If we unraveled all the DNA in one of our cells, would it reach to fucking Mars or some shit?
Not quite to Mars,
Okay.
but it's surprisingly long. The haploid human genome, that's one copy of each chromosome, has about 3.1 billion base pairs.
Holy shit. So like trying to read a book with billions of letters?
Exactly.
Okay, so back up for a sec. Base pairs chromosomes?
Yeah.
What the fuck are we even talking about here?
Think of it this way. DNA is like a language.
Okay.
And base pairs are the letters.
Right.
These letters are arranged into words, which are the genes.
Gotcha.
And those genes are organized on these long, stringy structures called chromosomes.
Okay.
And we humans, we've got 23 pairs of chromosomes, one set from each of our parents.
Okay, so our cells are carrying around these giant instruction manuals
Yeah.
written in this crazy DNA code.
It is wild.
That's pretty wild. But here's the thing. Out of all that DNA,
Yeah.
how much of it actually does something? I mean, there's got to be some bullshit in it,
Yeah.
right? Like leftover bits from when we were swimming around with the goddamn dinosaurs.
You're right. Not all DNA is created equal.
Of course.
Some sections called genes are directly responsible for making proteins.
Genes. Man genes. Everyone's heard of those fuckers. What's the deal with them?
Genes are like blueprints. For all the tiny machines that run our bodies,
Okay.
they tell our cells how to build proteins, which do everything from digesting our food to fighting off infection to making our muscles move.
So they're pretty important.
Very.
Okay, so genes are the real MVPs here.
Absolutely.
How many of those little bastards do we have?
The human genome contains roughly 20,000 protein coding genes.
20,000. That doesn't seem like a lot, considering how goddamn complex we are. Hell, I've got at least 20,000 brain cells just dedicated to figuring out how to get more beer.
Yeah, well, those protein coding genes only make up a tiny fraction of the genome.
Really?
Somewhere around 1 to 2%.
What the fuck? So what's all that other crap doing? Is it just taking up space? Like a hoarder's basement?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
For a long time, scientists called it junk DNA because they didn't know what it did.
Right.
But we're starting to realize that a lot of it has really important functions.
Wait, hold up. You're telling me there's DNA that's like the boss of the other DNA, calling the shots and shit?
In a way, yeah. Some of this non-coding DNA acts as regulatory elements.
Okay.
These are like switches
Right.
that control when and where genes get turned on or off.
So like, even though I've got the genes to be ripped as hell, some sneaky piece of non-coding DNA is saying, nah, let's keep that beer gut going strong.
Something like that.
Okay.
And there are other types of non-coding DNA too, like the ones that code for things like tRNA and rRNA. They play a critical role in helping to build proteins.
Okay, so we're talking about genes, bosses,
Yeah.
and a whole lot of mysterious DNA. My brain's starting to hurt. But if we all basically have the same genes, what makes us so damn different? Is it all nurture over nature or some bullshit like that?
It's not quite that simple. Even though our DNA is 99.9% similar to each other,
Really?
there's still a shit ton of variation within that tiny 0.1%.
Wait, hold the phone. You're telling me that a measly 0.1% difference is responsible for all the variety we see in humans, from Einstein to that asshat who stole my parking spot this morning?
Exactly. A lot of that variation comes from tiny differences called single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs.
SNPs? What the hell are those?
They're like typos in the DNA code.
Okay, but how much can one tiny fucking letter change?
Yeah.
It's like changing one ingredient in a recipe. Does it really make that much of a difference?
It can make more of a difference than you might think.
Really?
For instance, there are SNPs that can influence how your body processes caffeine.
What?
Some people can down an entire pot of coffee and feel nothing,
Yeah.
while others get jittery after a single cup.
That's wild.
It is. And then there's structural variation, which involves larger scale changes to the genome.
Okay.
These can include deletions, duplications, or even inversions of whole chunks of DNA.
Inversions, you mean like flipping a whole paragraph of the instruction manual backwards?
Exactly. Imagine copying and pasting a chunk of text in the wrong place or flipping it around.
Yeah.
It can really mess things up.
Shit, this is getting deep.
It is. And you know, we haven't even talked about our primate cousins yet.
Oh, yeah, the monkeys. Let's get real. How much of this DNA crap did we steal from those hairy bastards? Like, are we 99% chimpanzee or some crazy shit like that?
Not quite 99%, but it is surprisingly close.
All right.
We share around 98.8% of our DNA with chimpanzees.
Seriously?
Yeah.
So we're practically kissing cousins with those banana-munching freaks.
Genetically speaking, yeah. But that 1.2% difference might seem small, but it accounts for some pretty massive distinctions between us.
Like what?
Well, for example, there's a gene called FOXP2.
Okay.
And a small difference in this gene between humans and chimps is thought to be crucial for our ability to form complex language.
So basically, a tiny tweak in one gene is what separates us from swinging from trees and flinging our shit.
Pretty much. And speaking of evolution, you know, we've lost a ton of olfactory receptor genes compared to other mammals, right?
Olfactory receptor genes? Is that why my sense of smell is shit compared to my dog? That explains a lot.
Exactly. Over time, we haven't needed a superpowered sense of smell like our furry friends.
Makes sense. I'd rather have a big brain than be able to sniff out a pizza from a mile away. Speaking of DNA, is there anything else we need to cover before we move on?
Actually, yeah. There's one more type of DNA we need to discuss.
Hit me with it.
Mitochondrial DNA.
Wait, hold the phone. There's more DNA hiding out in our cells. I'm starting to think our cells are like goddamn clown cars. More shit keeps popping out. Where the hell does it all fit?
Mitochondrial DNA, or mtDNA, is totally separate from the DNA we've been talking about so far, which is found in the nucleus of our cells.
Okay.
Mitochondria are like the powerhouses of the cell.
Powerhouses, huh?
And get this, mtDNA is passed down only from our mothers.
So that means I got all my mitochondria from my mom. Thanks, Mom. You're the real MVP.
Exactly.
Yep.
And because mtDNA is passed down directly from mother to child, it's a goldmine of information about our maternal ancestry.
Interesting.
And has played a huge role in helping scientists understand human evolution.
Shit, this genome thing just keeps getting weirder and weirder. So we've got the nuclear DNA.
Yeah.
The mitochondrial DNA, the genes, the bosses of those genes.
Yep.
And a whole lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah.
What else could possibly fuck things up?
Well, there's one more layer of complexity we haven't even touched on yet.
Okay.
Epigenetics.
Epigenetics. That sounds like some next level bullshit. Lay it on me, Doc.
Epigenetics is the study of how gene expression can change without altering the actual DNA sequence.
Okay.
Imagine the DNA is the hardware.
Okay.
And epigenetics is the software that tells it what to do.
So it's like putting a sticky note on a page of the instruction manual saying, ignore this shit, right?
Pretty much. One of the key mechanisms involved is DNA methylation.
DNA methylation.
It's like attaching a little tag to the DNA that can switch genes on or off.
Okay, so what kind of things can trigger these sticky notes? Is it all just random chant? Or can we actually influence this shit?
That's the wild part. Environmental factors. Like diet and stress can actually change your epigenome.
Wait, you're telling me that what I eat and how stressed out I am can actually reprogram my DNA?
That's right. It's one of the most exciting areas of research right now.
Wow.
Because it means we're not just slaves to our genes. To a certain extent, we have some control over how they express themselves.
Holy shit. So all those years of pounding beers and scarfing down greasy burgers might have actually changed my DNA.
Possibly. We're still learning about the long-term effects of epigenetics.
Okay.
But it's clear that it plays a major role in shaping who we are.
Mind officially blown. All right, so we've just blasted through a shit ton of info about your own goddamn DNA. We've learned that it's complex, it's fascinating, and it's full of surprises. And most importantly, we've learned that we're not just victims of our genes. We can influence how they express themselves through the choices we make.
It really is empowering to realize that we're not just passengers on this genetic ride. We can actually steer the ship to some degree.
Damn right. All right, now that we've got a grasp on the basics of DNA and how it works, let's get into some more specific questions. Like, what's the deal with genetic testing? Are these companies legit, or are they just trying to sell us snake oil?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And one we should definitely delve into. The world of genetic testing is a wild west out there.
It is?
With tons of companies making big promises.
Yeah, they're all like, spit in this tube and we'll tell you your entire life story. But how accurate is this shit? Can they really predict whether I'm going to get cancer or become a billionaire?
Let's unpack that right now.
Okay.
The accuracy and reliability of genetic testing can vary wildly.
Okay, so let's cut the crap and get down to brass tacks. What can these tests actually tell us? And what should we be wary of? Hit me with your expert knowledge, Doc.
All right, let's dive into the wild world of genetic testing. First off, it's important to understand that there are different types of genetic tests out there, each with its own level of accuracy and limitations.
Okay, so break it down for us.
Yeah.
What are the main types of genetic tests people are getting these days?
One common type is ancestry testing, which analyzes your DNA to trace your family roots and ethnic origins. These tests can be pretty accurate in identifying broad geographical regions where your ancestors came from, but they get a little fuzzy when it comes to pinpoint accuracy.
Yeah, my buddy took one of those tests, and it said he was like 10% Viking. I'm pretty sure he's 100% bullshit.
Well, those ancestry tests are more about probabilities than definitive answers.
Okay.
Then you have health-related genetic tests, which look for specific genes or mutations that might increase your risk for certain diseases.
Okay, that's where it gets interesting. Can these tests really tell me if I'm going to get cancer or drop dead from a heart attack?
Not exactly. Most diseases are complex and influenced by a combination of genetic and environmental factors.
Okay.
A genetic test might reveal that you have a higher risk for certain conditions, but it doesn't mean you're destined to get them. It's like having a loaded gun. You might be more likely to get shot, but it doesn't mean you will.
So these tests are more like warning signs than crystal balls.
Exactly. They can give you valuable information about your health risks, but they shouldn't be taken as a guarantee of what your future holds.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's say I take one of these tests and it says I've got a higher risk for some nasty shit like Alzheimer's. What the fuck do I do with that information?
That's where things can get tricky. Knowledge is power, but it can also be a heavy burden. Some people find it empowering to know their risks so they can take steps to mitigate them.
Like start eating more kale and doing goddamn Sudoku puzzles.
Well, a healthy lifestyle is never a bad idea, but in some cases, there might be specific medical interventions or lifestyle changes that can make a difference.
So if I know I'm at risk for heart disease, I might hit the gym more often or lay off the bacon cheeseburgers.
Exactly. But for some conditions, there might not be much you can do. That's why it's important to weigh the potential benefits and drawbacks of genetic testing before you take the plunge.
So what you're saying is, don't freak out if your genetic test comes back with some red flags. It's not a death sentence, just a heads up to take better care of yourself.
Precisely. And it's crucial to remember that these tests are not foolproof. There's always a margin of error, and our understanding of genetics is constantly evolving.
Yeah, science is a fickle bitch, isn't she? Always changing her mind and making us look like idiots. So let's say I'm thinking about getting one of these genetic tests. What should I be looking for in a company?
That's a great question. With so many companies popping up, it's essential to do your research and choose a reputable one. Look for companies that are transparent about their methodology, have a good track record for accuracy, and offer genetic counseling services to help you understand your results.
Genetic counseling, so like a therapist for your DNA.
Sort of. Genetic counselors are trained professionals who can help you interpret your test results, explain the implications for your health, and discuss your options. They can also provide emotional support, which can be especially important if you receive unexpected or concerning news.
Okay, so it's like having a guide to help you navigate this crazy genetic maze. Makes sense. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. Privacy. I mean, these companies are getting access to our most personal information, our goddamn DNA, to stop them from selling that shit to the highest bidder.
That's a valid concern. Privacy is a big issue in the world of genetic testing.
For sure.
Some companies have stronger privacy policies than others, so it's important to read the fine print before you spit in that tube.
Yeah, because the last thing I need is some insurance company denying me coverage because they found out I'm predisposed to getting fat and lazy.
That's a legitimate worry. There's a lot of debate about how genetic information should be used and protected. Some people argue that it should be treated like any other medical record, while others are concerned about the potential for discrimination.
So basically, it's a legal and ethical minefield.
Nah.
Joy. All right, before we wrap up this genetic testing saga, any other red flags we should be on the lookout for?
Be wary of companies that make grandiose claims about what their tests can reveal, or offer personalized health advice. based solely on your genetics.
Yeah, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So what's the bottom line here, Doc? Are genetic tests worth the hype, or are they just a fancy way to waste money and freak yourself out?
Genetic testing can be a valuable tool for understanding your health risks and ancestry.
Okay.
But it's important to approach it with a healthy dose of skepticism and realistic expectations.
Okay, so do your research, read the fine print, and don't believe everything you read on the internet. Got it. Now let's move on to something a little more controversial, genetic engineering. We touched on this briefly before, but I want to dive deeper into this rabbit hole. Are we talking designer babies and superhuman abilities, or is that still just sci-fi bullshit?
We're definitely moving into uncharted territory with genetic engineering with tools like CRISPR. We now have the ability to manipulate our genes with unprecedented precision.
Hold up, CRISPR. That sounds like something out of a goddamn comic book. Refresh my memory. What the hell is that?
CRISPR is basically a genetic Swiss Army knife. It lets scientists cut and paste DNA sequences with incredible accuracy, like a surgeon operating on your genes.
So we're talking about editing out diseases, making people smarter, maybe even giving ourselves superpowers. Shit, sign me the fuck up.
Hold your horses there, cowboy. While the potential of CRISPR is huge, it's still a very new technology, and there are a ton of ethical and safety concerns we need to consider before we start messing around with our genetic code.
Okay, so what are the risks? Are we talking about creating a race of mutant super babies that turn on us and enslave humanity?
That's probably more science fiction than reality, at least for now. But there are serious concerns about unintended consequences. When you edit a gene, you might accidentally affect other genes or disrupt important biological pathways.
So it's like trying to fix a leaky faucet and accidentally flooding the entire fucking house.
That's a good analogy. And then there are the ethical questions about whether it's even right to manipulate human embryos.
Yeah.
Some people argue that it's playing God and could lead to a world where parents are choosing their children's traits, like ordering off a menu.
Yeah, that's some real Gattaca shit right there. Nobody wants to live in a world where everyone's genetically engineered to be perfect little robots. Where's the fun in that?
Exactly. We need to have a serious public conversation about the ethical implications of genetic engineering before this technology gets out of hand.
So what's the current state of play with this stuff? Are scientists already editing human embryos, or is that still a big no-no?
Right now, there are strict regulations in place that prohibit genetically modified babies in most countries. But the research is moving forward rapidly, and it's only a matter of time before this technology becomes more widely available.
Okay, so we've got this powerful tool that can potentially cure diseases and enhance human abilities, but it's also fraught with risks and ethical dilemmas. Sounds about right. So what do you think the future holds for genetic engineering? Are we going to see designer babies running around anytime soon?
It's hard to predict the future. But I think we'll see a gradual increase in the use of genetic engineering for medical purposes.
Okay.
For example, correcting genetic defects that cause serious diseases in embryos could become more commonplace.
So we might be able to wipe out diseases like cystic fibrosis or Huntington's before a baby's even born.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn amazing.
It is. But the idea of using genetic engineering for enhancement purposes, like boosting intelligence or athletic ability, is a much more controversial topic.
Yeah, that's where things get ethically murky. Who gets to decide what constitutes an enhancement, and what happens to people who can't afford these genetic upgrades?
Those are questions that society will need to grapple with as this technology advances. We need to be careful not to create a genetic divide between the haves and the have-nots.
Right. We don't want to end up with a world where the rich can buy themselves perfect genes, while the rest of us are stuck with our flawed factory-setting DNA. That would be some serious dystopian bullshit.
It's crucial to ensure that genetic engineering is used responsibly and equitably, so it benefits all of humanity, not just a privileged few.
Damn straight. All right, we've covered a lot of ground today, from the basics of DNA to the mind-blowing potential of genetic engineering. My brain is officially fried. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners before we wrap this motherfucker up?
Just this. The human genome is an incredible and powerful source of information. It tells the story of our past, present, and future, and as we learn more about it and develop new ways to manipulate it, we need to proceed with caution, wisdom, and a deep sense of responsibility.
Well said, Doc Art, you magnificent degenerates. We just took a wild ride through the twisted jungle of our own damn DNA. We learned it's complex, it's fascinating, and it's full of surprises. And as we enter this brave new world of genetic engineering, we need to make sure we use this power wisely. And don't fuck it up for everyone else. Stay curious, stay informed, and stay awesome.